Hey, so if you're a product manager jumping into the world of AI, you've probably had that feeling, right? That little sinking feeling that your trusty old product requirements document, your PRD, just isn't built for this. Well, today we're going to break down exactly why that classic PRD is failing in the age of AI, and more importantly, how to build one that actually works.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Does your standard PRD template have a section for hallucinations or token costs? What about the fact that your model's behavior isn't always 100% predictable? If that sounds familiar, you are in the right place. We're going to figure out how to adapt. And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of the problem. Traditional software is deterministic. If a user clicks button X, Y is going to happen every single time. But AI systems, they're probabilistic. Their answers can change based on the data, the prompt, the model itself. It's a totally different ballgame, and it demands a completely new way of writing our requirements.
Okay, so first up, let's really dig into exactly where the old PRD falls apart. This is the fundamental clash between the old way we used to spec things out and the new reality of building with artificial intelligence. Look, a classic PRD just was not designed for any of this. It doesn't have a field for model behavior or hallucination risk. It has no idea how to handle the specific costs of AI. You're trying to define these complex rules around safety and governance in a document that was never built for that kind of nuance. It's truly like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't work. All right, enough about the problem. Let's start talking about the solution. And here's the thing. Before you even get to models or data, you have to nail the strategic foundation. That means starting with your objectives and, this is so important, totally rethinking the user journey for an AI-powered world. For AI products, your success criteria have to be bigger than just revenue and usage. You absolutely have to bring in risk-related outcomes. Are you aiming for positive press? Do you need to prove you won't hurt user conversion? Can you keep churn below 10%? These kinds of metrics are so important because they acknowledge the unique risks that come with AI. And that's because AI interactions are just different. They're not just a series of button clicks anymore. They're conversations. You have to map out what's happening on the surface layer, what the user actually sees, like a chat box, and connect it to the underwater layer, which is that whole complex AI workflow doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Let's make this super concrete with an example. An employee types, "I want to book vacation." Simple enough, right? That's the surface layer. But underwater, the AI router sees more than a question. It identifies a specific task. And it knows that for this task, it needs to connect to the Workday API to actually make it happen. See, it's a totally different way of thinking about user flow. Okay, now we're getting into the real technical core of the AI PRD. This is where we go beyond the big picture strategy and start to define the nuts and bolts, the model, the data, and the prompts that are going to guide the whole thing. You can't just write AI powered on the PRD and call it a day. Your engineers need details, real specifics. Do you need a huge context window, say over 128K tokens, to chew through big documents? What's the retrieval strategy? Are we using a modular RAG system? How fast does this thing need to feel? And are we just dealing with text, or do we need to handle images too? These details are absolutely non-negotiable. And remember, a model is only as good as the data it's fed and the instructions it's given. So your PRD has to be crystal clear. It needs to list the exact data sources, like your HR policy docs. It needs to define how often that data gets refreshed. And you have to set very clear prompt rules. These are the guardrails that tell the model how to behave, like always using correct pronouns or refusing to do anything that violates company policy. Now, this brings us to what I think is the most critical part of the whole document. You don't just QA an AI for bugs. You have to evaluate it for trust. This section is where you literally design trust as a feature by defining how you're going to measure performance and handle risk. So, how in the world do you measure something as fuzzy as trust? Well, you start with what's called an evaluation spec. This means you create a golden data set, a standardized set of questions where you already know the correct answers. For our HR agent, this might be 100 or more common policy questions. This becomes your yardstick, your single source of truth for measuring how well the AI is doing. And the very first metric we're measuring against that yardstick is the hallucination rate. We're setting a hard target here, less than 3%. Why? Because the model absolutely positively cannot be allowed to make up the company's vacation policy. The stakes are just way too high. Next up, speed. We're talking latency. For a chat experience to feel natural and conversational, the answers have to come back fast. So we're setting a target of under 3 seconds at the 95th percentile. This makes sure the user isn't just sitting there waiting, which is a huge part of building their confidence in the tool. And this one isn't absolute. 0%. We're talking zero tolerance for leaking any personally identifiable information, or PII. The model can never, ever reveal another employee's personal info, like their salary. This is a bright red line, a total non-negotiable for building any kind of trust. All of those metrics feed into what we call evaluation gates. Think of this as your decision-making framework for whether it's safe to ship. A hard gate, like any PII leakage, is an automatic deal breaker. It blocks the release, full stop. A soft gate, like maybe a small drop in accuracy, triggers a manual review. And an advisory issue, like the tone sounding a little robotic, just gets logged so we can fix it later. So, we've defined our strategy, we've spec'd out our AI engine, and we've built our trust framework. Now let's talk about the final piece of the puzzle, how to actually launch this thing safely and responsibly. Because AI is probabilistic, you almost never just flip a switch and launch to everyone at once. That's what we call a big bang launch, and it's just too risky. The best practice is a phased rollout. You start with your own team, dogfooding it internally. Then you expand to a limited beta with a small, trusted group of users. And only then, after you've learned from them, do you go for a full launch. It's all about catching those weird edge cases before they affect everybody. So as we start to wrap this all up, what does this really add up to? Well, it's about a pretty fundamental shift in mindset for us as product managers. Honestly, if you only take one thing away from all this, let it be this. You are no longer just writing deterministic specs, if this, then that. You are now designing probabilistic guardrails. You're defining the safe boundaries within which the AI is allowed to operate to be accurate, helpful, and trustworthy. And when you get this right, the payoff is huge. A really solid AI PRD makes sure everyone is aligned on the business goals. It helps you build a more reliable model. It fosters real user trust. It lets you deploy safely. And it creates a foundation for scaling your AI operations in the future. It really is the blueprint for a success. Now look, building a document like this is a journey. And if you want to go even deeper into AI product strategy, discovery, design, the whole 9 yards, these deep dives are an absolutely incredible resource to keep the learning going. And for the entire framework that we've talked about today, and to get all the latest strategies on agentic AI and product leadership, I really, really encourage you to subscribe to the AI Product Management Playbook on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for tuning in.